Those of you who live in small towns, what is the current local controversy all about? Nothing current, but I have a great one from 5 years ago. So we had a guy who was quite the libertarian. He owned a gun store in town and pretty much kept to himself. He will be known as Lib Guy. The problem started when he decided to have chickens for his own eggs, but he lived within the city proper, which had a rule against farm animals within the city. This is a rural farming area I live in. One of the city council members, he shall be known as a Hole, discovered he had chickens a few weeks after he got them, and the city sent him a letter telling him he had to get rid of them. Well, he was not going to go down without a fight. So he spent some time looking into things and discovered the a-hole who reported him lived within the city and he also had chickens. Well, this of course caused a bit of a scandal. The city ended up claiming there was a grandfather clause for anyone who had livestock within the city prior to the rule change 17 years ago. The problem with that was that clause applied to the a-hole's father, not the a-hole who lived at the same address. Needless to say, the war was on. A couple of weeks go by and the town cops are messing with Lib Guy over petty shit. Lib Guy somehow gets a recording of a Hole calling the police and lying to them about what Lib Guy was doing. Police now want to charge Lib Guy for some absurd, ridiculous recording law that really doesn't apply, since it was someone with the police department who gave him the tape, not that he stole it. This gets blown up to the point where the bigger cities' news crews are now showing up to city council meetings that are being called to address this issue. These meetings are getting absurdly blown out of proportion and in all honesty somewhat slimy and jicky in how the city is handling it. Lib Guy subpoenas the city council emails to show there was a concerted effort to fuck with him and cover for a Hole. Well, in the course of getting the emails, it was discovered that there was a sexting issue going on between 3 of the city council members. LMAO, believe me when I say this did not involve people that would be considered sexy. All 3, 2 women and 1 male, were married, £200 plus, and in their 50s. I mean emails about double dildos, pegging, swinging, etc. It was hilarious. In the end, the Lib Guy got the last laugh. He lost his chickens but found a loophole where he could actually own llamas in the city since they were not considered livestock. So, he put up a fence all around his yard, ugly chicken wire fence, just tall enough so the llamas could not get out by jumping. People actually would go by walking their dogs and pet the llamas. The problem though was that llamas shit like cows and it stinks in such a small enclosure. This went on for about a year until he sold his house and moved. It stunk for at least a block around his property and he lived right behind the town's grocery store. 2 of the council members involved got divorced over the sexting issue and the third one sold her bar because of it. This was the infamous chicken scandal that plagued my town of 4K for 3 years. Thousands of crabs washed ashore dead, but nobody really knows why. I think they blamed wind turbines at one point. Dogs are now getting really sick and there's warnings for people to stay away from the beach, but nobody knows why it's happening. A woman known as a pretty awful person disappeared. Everyone knows it was probably her husband, but the family owns over 10,000 acres and no body has been found. The rest of her family is ramping up an awareness campaign, so should be interesting to see where this all goes. The last thing that was super polarizing in my town was a painting on the front of a toy store called Inland Octopus. In our downtown, it was an octopus playing with a bunch of toys. Well, our town is very strict about our old school downtown. They ordered him to paint over it with brick orange paint. The store owner said hell no and it went to court for weeks. All the while the city was charging a huge fine every single day the painting stayed. A couple of the local millionaires kept paying the fine. They didn't care about the painting. They just liked the drama and liked to stick it to the city. Eventually the toy store lost and now it's just a huge ugly brick orange wall in the middle of downtown. Us locals still talk about now and then. But at the time it was an uproar. While fleeing another hit and run, and possible DUI, some dude tried to go full speed directly through the middle of our town square. The problem with that is we have a big historic fountain there. Traffic is usually supposed to swerve around the fountain, he did not. This dude in a white SUV ramps into our fountain, and smashes into the center pillar. Thankfully the fountain was off for the winter, so there was less damage, but they still have no clue how, and how much money it's gonna take to fix this mess. The car was removed, but the fountain is still wrapped up in its tarp a month later. There's security cam footage of the ramp and it's all anyone could talk about for a few weeks. If the local horse dentist is actually a licensed horse dentist. Car was spotted in a field burnt to a crisp on New Year's Day. Found around noon since nobody was out and around. Farmer finally drove by and called the landowner to see if he knew about it, which he did not. Hearing that, he approached the vehicle until he was about 20 feet away and noticed a burnt body next to it. He then called 911. Nothing was known about who it was till a missing person was reported later that day. Car and body were so burnt no identifying could be done immediately. 2 cameras caught the whole thing from local farm grain bins. Video showed the car in the field and then light moving as if it was stuck and trying to get out. Assumptions are the catalytic converter started the fire, but no one knows for sure. All happened at around 2 a.m. Not much controversy, but definitely the talk of the town. Funeral for the man was a week and a half ago. A guy wanted to bury his parents on the slightly rural, totally out of the way, virtually no neighbor's property, but the village said no way. We don't do that here. We're classy. So he went to the state for permission to build a funeral home, crematorium instead, and he built a giant mausoleum with both their caskets right on the corner of the property where everyone and their grandma can see it when they drive by. And he has zero plans to actually turn this into a functioning business. It's about half done, no landscaping, and construction vehicles parked all over the place. Gotta hand it to him. Progress. July 2022. I don't live in a small town, but my small bit of the city were amused today. A woman posted in the local neighborhood Facebook group to say a woman had knocked on her door at 6:25 a.m. The reason was she had tracked her missing husband's phone to the address. He had not come back the night before. The man was not there and the poster was a bit concerned. This led to much chat about burglaries and whether she should post the Ring doorbell footage. A man then joined the thread to apologize. It was the missing man. He had got drunk at the football and ended up falling asleep in the house next door to the woman who posted on Facebook. Much hilarity. A lady who has lived in the neighborhood forever has started losing her mind and is stealing lawn ornaments, pots, plants, etc. from everyone else's yard. The police refuse to arrest her because the situation is sad. So every few months the police host a "Get Back Your Shit" event and we just collect our things from her yard. It is surreal, but I wish her the best. A couple promised a lot of cakes and fancy breads to the local festival, and didn't deliver. Everyone is mad at them for the last 2 weeks. Some lady that owned a large flea market took 100k plus of COVID, don't fire your employees, money, fired everyone and is now leaving the country, all while thinking the town was lucky to have her. Town of about 1800. The girls' volleyball coach got a DWI. The school's principal went to pick her up from jail, and was arrested for DWI himself. Somehow it got out that these two, both married, were having an affair. Not current, but it needs to be documented in history. The serial catnapper. A couple lost their cat, so they went knocking door to door in our town, and came across their cat crying in a random home's front window. They call the police, who arrive and find 50 plus missing cats, along with a fucking graveyard of cats in the garden. Some that had been missing for up to 7 years. It culminated in the catnapper, a 50-plus-year-old woman, stuffing as many cats as she could in a car and going on a police chase through our little town. Most of the cats were identified and taken home, a very small few went to rescue centers, and the catnapper is currently going under mental health treatment. Apparently she just took home any cat she saw while on a walk for the last 7 years. This happened about a couple years back, but I had to tell the tale. 2 places make dill dip. One accused the other of stealing the recipe. My country is the size of a small town. One problem at the moment is that we have these things called roundels. They are kinda like roundabouts, but no one has right of way and there's no lanes. You just drive wherever you want, and people are getting super angry about it even though nothing's bad happened since they opened them. People here in my town of 396 still upset that the local Christmas tree was taken down and thrown away with all the lights still on it. The woman who just got elected mayor owns most of the property downtown, and all the open seats on city council went to her employees. Can't wait to see the corruption in action. Small town with 3,000 inhabitants. Everyone knows each other, everyone knows where everyone works, who is related to whom, and so on. Still, my cousin doesn't know who is the father of her child. Swans in the local rivers, lakes have been dying from avian flu, and we've all been warned to keep our dogs away from sick or dead swans in case infection spreads to humans. About 2 years ago, the mayor of the town I live in got caught with drunk driving his lawnmower down Main Street at around 2 a.m. about 6 weeks after being elected. Edit. I can't wrap my head around the fact that my mayor getting drunk and driving a lawnmower would become one of my most upvoted comments, but here we are. The city I live in, around 10k residents or so, doesn't allow food trucks to operate outside of things like festivals. There has been a push to change that, and, coincidentally, majority of most vocal people against them are restaurant owners. 2 years ago there were horrible fires in the valley I live in. 3 people burned to death, tons of houses and businesses lost. We are still recovering. The city decided this statue would be the best way to honor the victims. The back lights up to look like fire. Yup, a statue showing 3 people on fire is how they wanted to honor the victims. Here's an article about it. They just built a new Verizon in town, but someone started a rumor that it was also going to be a Panera Bread. Someone went as far as to mark it on Google Maps as a Panera, even though the building is clearly a single store with Verizon signage. They're still trying to figure out who is black. The village has 249 people. On the census everyone reported white except one person who reported biracial or something, and now the demographics show that the town is 0.7% black. Not currently, but a few years ago this was all the rage. There was a peanut butter bandit plaguing my town. They would break into cars, houses, random buildings. They wouldn't take anything. They would just leave an open peanut butter jar. Very ominous. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing and liking. Any feedback in the comments would be greatly appreciated so that we can make these videos even better. Thanks for watching Upvote Stories.